Hi, this is Rob. Welcome to the video where we're actually going to start learning HTML. Please note that I'll be using the terminal to navigate the file system on my Mac. I'll be creating files and folders and writing code in Visual Studio. If you're not familiar with any of these things, you may find the intro playlist in my channel helpful as I walk you through working with your file system, using the terminal, and installing VS Code. Okay, with that out of the way, we're ready to start learning HTML, which means we'll be writing code and storing it in files that we need to save on our computer. So that means we're going to need a place to save those files, and that place is going to be in a directory. It's common practice for developers to create a single folder or directory in which they'll create other folders for the projects they're working on. So to get started, I'll launch the terminal, make it a bit bigger, and create a directory named development. I could do that using the make directory command, which is mkdir, adding a space, and then the name of the folder I want to create, which is development. If I do an ls-al, I'll now see the development folder that I just created. So I'll change directory into that folder using the cd command, and create another folder to hold the files I'll be writing in this tutorial series. So I'll make a directory named tutorials and change directory cd into that folder. If I do a pwd to print the working directory, we'll see I'm in the development/tutorials folder. Now let's create one final folder for the videos in this playlist. So mkdir for make directory, HTML, and cd, change directory, into the HTML folder. pwd shows me I'm in that location. When you're building a website, you'll have several files that represent the pages on your site. But it's common practice for the home page to be named index.html. So I can create that page, or at least a file in which I can write the code into that page using the touch command. So touch space the name of the file, which is index.html, and if I do an ls-al, we'll see the file we created. If I do a cat, which will show me the contents of the file, so cat space index.html and hit enter, we'll see the file is empty. Okay, so now we have our folders and our index.html in place. Let's launch VS Code so we can start coding. Alright, so now VS Code is launched, and I know you want to jump right in and start writing some HTML, and I promise we'll get there in a second. But first, let me show you a couple configuration changes you can make to VS Code, which will make your life a bit easier to work with the editor. First, hit the Command, Shift, and P keys on your keyboard to open the VS Code command palette. Then, start typing shell space command :space install, and when you see the option to install code in the command path, go ahead and click it. Click OK. May require you to enter your password, and then click OK to confirm that the code command was successfully installed in the path. Now if you quit VS Code, and you could do that using the Command Q keys, go back to our terminal, and let's clear this and then do a pwd to show that we're in the development tutorials HTML folder where we left off, and an ls-al shows us the index.html we previously created. If we type code space dot, which will execute the code command to launch VS Code in dot, which means the current folder. So if I hit enter, it will launch VS Code inside of that folder. I'll go ahead and trust the authors of the files in this folder, and then close the Get Started page. Now, over on the left, we see we're in the HTML folder, and we have the index.html file. If I click on that, of course the file's empty, and that's where we'll start writing our code. However, I did tell you that I wanted to show you a couple configurations that will help working with VS Code easier as you progress through the tutorial series. And the second configuration change that I'd like to show you is actually installing an extension to VS Code. So if you go over to the icon with the boxes and click on it, this will bring you to the Extensions tab. And if you search for Live Server and then click on it, this will allow you to install the Live Server extension that you can use to launch your web pages in your browser. Now, there are a couple different ways that you could launch your web pages. As you write your code and save them in HTML files, you could go right out to the folder, find the file, double click it, and it will launch it in the browser. Then if you make changes to that file in VS Code and save them, you'll go back out and reload that page in the browser. Installing Live Server allows those changes to be updated in the server automatically. So if I were to write code in the index.html file and then launch it from VS Code using Live Server, that page would open in the web browser and I would see the rendering of the code that I wrote in the browser. Then if I made changes to the file in VS Code and saved that, when I went back to the browser, it would automatically be updated showing the changes to the code that I had written. Now, I know it seems like a small thing, but it is very helpful and very efficient as you start writing more and more code. So from here, let's click the Install button to install Live Server into VS Code. Okay, we'll close the dialog after it's launched, and then close the Extension tab. Go back to the folder icons to bring us to the HTML folder and click the index.html file. And if we right click, we have an option to open with Live Server. This will launch the browser and display the web page that we have written. Of course, there's no code in here yet, but you can see index.html is being served from a location called 127.0.0.1, which is the IP address or the location of the current machine that you are running on. So you're on your local machine or your development machine. We launched Live Server, which is a web server serving the index.html page in the browser. The :5500 is the port that the server is running on. So in sum, 127.0.0.1 :5500 is the address and port that Live Server will serve the web page from. Index.html, of course, is the web page that we've created. Again, there's no code in it yet, which is why we're seeing a blank page. Okay, so here we are back in VS Code with our index.html file open. Now we can start coding. The first line in every HTML page is going to be what we call the Doctype Declaration. And this tells the web browser, when it loads the web page, what type of document to expect. So the syntax for that will be a less than sign, explanation, and doctype. And right now we see one of the benefits of using a code editor versus a plain text editor, and that is code completion. As soon as I type the less than sign, because this file has a .html extension, VS Code knows that, hey, we're creating a web page here. So the syntax in which the code will be written is in HTML. So again, if I delete the explanation and the less than sign, start typing it again, this will show me a list of HTML commands that I can use in my document. And since the first line is always the doc type, I can just hit enter since doc type is highlighted, and it will insert that line of code for me. And this is a syntactically correct Doctype declaration. What this tells the browser is, hey browser, the document type that you are going to receive is HTML. And specifically, this syntax here with just HTML means an HTML5 document. All right, so the next line we want is the HTML element itself. And if I hit enter, it will put the HTML tag in there. However, it didn't close it. Like up above on the doc type, as soon as I started typing less than, it recognized, hey, it's HTML syntax. Let's show a list of commands that the developer can choose from. I chose the Doctype declaration, and it completed the tag. So the less than sign in HTML syntax starts the tag or the element, and the greater than sign in this case closes it. However, we don't have the greater than sign here, which means that we can put other code in this tag. These other pieces of code that we could write within the HTML tag are attributes. So the HTML tag has an attribute named lang to specify the language of the content that we're writing in the code. So when the browser loads this index.html page, it knows it's an HTML page because of the HTML Doctype declaration. And now we're telling it, hey, all of the HTML wrapped within the HTML tags should be in the English language. Now I can go ahead and type the greater than sign myself, which will close that opening HTML tag and then give me the closing HTML tag. Now you'll notice a difference. The Doctype declaration is just one tag. We call this a self-closing tag. There's no corresponding /doctype closing tag. However, if you look at the HTML tag, we have the opening tag and the closing tag. And what this tells us is that we can create other HTML elements inside of the opening and closing HTML tag. And that's what we're about to do now. So there are two primary sections to any HTML page. The first section is the head, which I can close, and that will give me the closing tag. And the next section is the body. This head tag has an opening and closing tag, which means that we can write other HTML elements within. And one of the elements that we want to enter is the title, again, which has an opening and closing tag. So that tells us we can put content within these tags. So I'll write demo for the title of our web page. And when this page loads, that's what we'll see inside of the browser. So if I save that, then relaunch the page with live server, when the browser loads, we'll see the word demo in the tab. This is the title of the web page. So in the head section, we created the title, we gave it the word demo. If I were to change this, because we're using live server, make the change and save it, go back to live server, we'll see that the title has been updated. I'll change it back and move down to the body. Now the body contains all of the HTML code or elements and content that we want to see displayed inside the body of the page. So that's this white area. So if I were to write hello world and save the file, go back to the browser, we see the hello world text displayed in the body of the web page. So that is our first HTML page, as simple as it is. But this is the proper syntax for getting started writing HTML pages. They'll all have a Doctype declaration. They'll all have an open and closing HTML tag. They'll all have a head with an open and close tag and a title. And then following the head will be the body with the open and close tag. And of course, the content we want to see displayed on the page will be contained within the body. And since the body has opening and closing tags, we know that we could create more HTML tags or more HTML elements within the body. And that's what we'll do in our next video.